Hello everyone and welcome to 30 Days of Java. It's day 18 now and today we'll be discussing about exceptions in Java. Our agenda for this video would be to first understand what an exception is and how is it different from an error. Then we'll look at handling these exceptions in our code using try-catch blocks and how to rethrow an exception. Finally, we'll discuss handling multiple exceptions in our code. So let's begin. Exceptions in Java are objects that represent exceptional conditions that can occur during the execution of a program. These exceptional conditions disrupt the normal flow of the program's instructions. Imagine you're baking a cake following a recipe. Now let's say you run out of sugar while mixing the ingredients. That's like an exception in baking. It's something unexpected that stops you from following the recipe smoothly. Let's understand how exception and errors are different from each other. Both exception and error belong to the throwable class in Java, but there are some differences between them. An exception can be either checked or unchecked type, whereas an error will be of type unchecked. Checked exception refer to exception that the compiler checks at compile time to ensure that they are either caught or declared to be thrown, and unchecked exceptions are those that originate during runtime. It's possible to recover from an exception. You can write your code to do a specific task in case an exception was encountered, whereas an error is mostly irreversible from a code perspective. Finally, an exception usually occurs due to problem in code, like you forgot to put a validation before using a null object or trying to divide a number by 0. But an error is typically caused by external factors such as hardware failure, system crash, or resource exhaustion. In Java, you can use a try-catch block to gracefully handle an exception in case it happens, preventing your program from crashing due to unexpected issues. In a try-catch block, you enclose the code that might throw an exception within the try block. If an exception occurs within the try block, Java immediately jumps to the catch block, which contains code to handle the exception. If no exception occurs, the catch block is skipped entirely, and the program continues execution after the try-catch block. So it acts like a safety net for your code. The throw statement in Java is used to explicitly throw an exception within your code. It allows you to create and throw custom exceptions or to rethrow exceptions caught in a try-catch block. In simple words, it throws the exception back to the calling method. It is usually used to throw a custom exception or specific type of exception based on your business requirements. In Java, you can handle multiple exceptions using either a single try block with multiple catch blocks or by chaining multiple catch blocks. In this approach, each catch block handles a specific type of exception. You can catch more specific exception first and catch more general exception later. However, only one of the catch blocks will be executed for an exception. Let's take a simple example to understand multiple exception approach better. Imagine you have an apple that represents an exception and there are various nets that represents different catch blocks which process the apple differently. One of them uses it to make apple juice, whereas the other uses it to make a pie. Now, whichever net catches the apple first will process it, and the other catch block will not process anything, as there is only one apple. Now let's implement everything that we have learned so far in IntelliJ. Let's create a very basic exception in our program. For that, we'll declare a variable named a and its value would be 1 divided by 0. Now if I run this program, you can see it printed out an exception that says exception in thread main java.lang.arithmetic_exception. So this is happening because in Java you can't divide a number by 0. Now this is a really basic program. So let's add some more logic into it. For that, I'll type in out and then loading 25%. Then copy this 50%, 75%, and then loading complete. Now if I run this program, you can see it printed out loading 25% and 50%, but after that it printed out the exception. So this is how the exception disrupts the flow of the program. It wasn't able to complete the program and print out loading 75% and complete. So this is a problem because the exception itself looks a little bit ugly, and from a user's perspective, it doesn't make much sense. So we need to handle this exception more gracefully. For that, we'll use a try-catch block. So we'll type in try, and then inside try block, we'll copy all of these statements that might create the exception and paste them. And inside catch, we'll give it exception ex so that it catches all type of exception for now. And then here we'll type in oops, something bad occurred. Now if I run this program, you can see it printed out loading 25% and then 50%, and then it printed out oops, something bad occurred. It didn't printed out the exception in this case. So this is how an exception can be handled. Instead of the system.out.println logic, you might have different logic, like rolling back a transaction, or making a call to an API endpoint, or retrying the logic again. That all depends on the business requirement. Now let's remove all of this logic inside try-catch block to understand how throw keyword works. I'll remove these. Now to understand how throw keyword works and where is it used, we'll take an example. Suppose if we have a variable named name. For now, I'm initializing its value here in the code, but you can have a scanner class that takes the user input for this name variable. Now, if name.length is smaller than equal to 3, then I'll throw an exception. And the exception would say length too small. In the catch block, I'll simply type out ex.getMessage. Now I have created a very basic program that takes a name variable from the user, for now we are hard coding it, and then checks the length of that name. If it is smaller than equal to 3, then it throws a new exception. So let's run this program. You can see it printed out length too small. This is happening because the length of the name is right now 3. If I change it to cats and then run this program, it works without any issue. This is how throw keyword can be used. It can be used for validation purposes, whether an object has some value or not. And if that object has value, whether it is of required type or specification or not. So this is how throw keyword is generally used in a production environment. Finally, let's see how multiple catch block works in Java. For that, we'll change this exception type to another type of exception. Let's say arithmetic exception for now, and then create another catch block. Now this would have runtime exception. This would output runtime exception occurred, and will create another catch block that would have parameter exception ex, and then exception occur. Now if I change the name back to cat and then run this program, it gave me the message exception occurred, that is the final catch block. This happened because we threw an exception type that was catched by this final catch block, which takes exception. So if you have multiple catch blocks with different type of exceptions defined in their parameter, then they would only catch those type of exceptions. So if I change this throw new exception to runtime exception and then run this program, you can see it was caught by the second catch block, that is runtime exception 1. Now if I change this again to arithmetic exception and then run this program, then it printed out the message as shown in the first catch block. So this is how multiple catch block works in Java. You can have n number of catch blocks and they would only catch their specific type of exception. As always, we'll end this video with a quote that says, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." Thank you for watching and have a great day.